This is one of the installments of our multi-part series regarding liens in the state of Georgia. These instruments are formally titled Mechanics and Materialman's liens. And their main purpose is to just help ensure payment to the contractors, subcontractors, and suppliers of labor and materials for the purpose of improving property, to improve real estate in any way. So keep in mind, there's a very strict statutory framework for this procedure, and if one of these detailed steps is missed, it can jeopardize the validity of the entire lien. So our law firm, we've focused a large part of our practice on construction and lien law for decades. We're here to answer any questions that anybody has, so just feel free to give us a call. We'll give a free consultation to anybody who has any questions along those lines. So in this series, I'm going to cover the basics of the lien procedure in Georgia. So here are the steps to be aware of. First, you need to decide whether or not you're even eligible to file a lien. So who is eligible to do this? Well, in Georgia, contractors, subcontractors, laborers, and material suppliers who provide labor and materials to improve real property all have the right to file a lien if they hadn't been paid. But to preserve that right, you have to have direct contract with the property owner or a contract with somebody who does, like a GC. There has to be what's called privity of contract there. All right, secondly, be aware of all of the notice requirements that are part of these lien statutes. And so in this particular video, I'm just going to be covering the basics of filing a lien in Georgia, and then I'll go into details about other parts of the lien law in different parts of this series so that we can cover notice requirement and strategies in a lot more detail. All right, so let's discuss some of the notice requirements that are involved in this process. First, and the first area of concern is to you want to distinguish whether the job is a commercial project or a residential job. Maybe you're working on a house, or if you're doing work on an apartment complex or some kind of office building. So you need, that's your first step. Determine whether the project is commercial or residential. If your work is on a commercial project, the notice requirements are going to be a little bit different than they would on a residential project. So if you're doing work on a commercial project and the general contractor has filed what's called a notice of commencement, we'll talk about that, but you should always assume that they're going to do that step. I see some missed every now and then, but assume that the GC is going to go ahead and file a notice of commencement, okay? So with that assumption, then what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to file what's called a notice to contractor, okay? And you have 30 days from the first furnishing of labor and materials to that job. You can't really wait until after it's over. That's the filing the lien deadline. So the notice to contractor has to be sent within 30 days of supplying services or materials. That is, if you're a second-tier sub, and we'll talk about that. So this notice is to be sent to both the owner and the general contractor. So if this is a residential project, then that notice to contractor step is not necessary, okay? So if you've not been paid after you've completed your work or you delivered materials to the project for really any reason, then you need to be aware of your deadline for filing of your lien, okay? You must file your lien in the Superior Court of the county where the property is located within 90 days from the last day from furnishing services or materials. So I'll cover whether or not you distinguish punch list items in another video. Since I get that question a lot, they say, Richard, do punch list items count as my last work on the project? But just always treat this as your last work, and then, punch lists can qualify, and I'm going to cover that in detail on one of the future videos. Okay. Then the next step, there's a very quick deadline after that, and you have to be aware of this document. So after the filing of your lien, you must send a copy of the lien to the property owner within 2 business days, and that's got to be by certified mail or statutory overnight delivery. If you don't do this step, then your lien is likely invalid. Okay, so how long is your lien good for? All right, your lien, if it's properly filed and you did everything I told you before, it's going to be good for 12 months. So a validly filed lien is going to be good for 1 full year before it expires. So being aware of this strict deadline is really critical, since most of the time the property probably hasn't even sold in that time frame. So what do you do then? What do you do if you're coming up on that 1-year deadline? So what you do in that next step is you do what's called perfecting your lien, okay? So you want to extend that time period that your lien is good for, so if that property doesn't refinance or sell within that 12-month period, you still get paid when it does change hands down the road. So how do you perfect a lien? And that process is done by the filing of a lawsuit. So you file a lawsuit, and then at the same time, you're going to file an accompanying notice of that lawsuit on the Superior Court records. Okay, so you would file your lawsuit against the company or individual that you contracted with on the job. And you can actually file that breach of contract suit in state court. A lot of times people get confused as to which court you file this breach of contract suit in, since they're just used to seeing all of these other notices being filed in the Superior Court. But, typically it's the state court that handles most of these civil actions and those lawsuits, and it's the Superior Court that registers the liens and the required notices, because that's where all of the deed and property records are kept for each county. Now, you could file your lawsuit in Superior Court, but I see Superior Court judges get a little bit perturbed when they see a breach of contract suit being filed in their courts. Okay, the next and last real basic step and notice requirement is called the notice of commencement of suit. Okay, and what that is it's required in order to inform all of the parties involved that a legal action has been initiated. And here are the steps for that. First, you just prepare a document. It's going to include the names of the parties involved. It's going to have the civil action number. That's really also known as the case number whenever you file that lawsuit in state court. And the court where that suit has been filed is going to have that case number. And then you're going to put on your notice just the nature of the lawsuit. Now, here's where it gets a little bit tricky because of the timing of all this. We're talking about this last critical step. Because you need to file that notice in the Superior Court within 10 days from the filing of that lawsuit, and note here, since I mentioned earlier that most lawsuits are filed in state court, you're going to be putting the state court civil action number on your notice that you're then going to be filing in the Superior Court, where the lien is filed, okay? So as the last step in this process, you then just need to serve a copy of that notice of commencement of suit on all the parties that are involved in that lawsuit. Okay, so in summary, as you can see, the lien laws in Georgia, they're very intricate, and one misstep really can just invalidate your lien. So just be sure to follow all the requirements, all the applicable deadlines, or just give us a call and we'll be happy to walk you through that whole process.